talk about a little later. It's called the will. The will takes precedent over all these reasons why you can't win. When John Kennedy was President of the United States, and he asked Dr. Wernher von Braun what it would take to build a rocket that would carry a person to the moon and bring him back safely to Earth, von Braun didn't go on about all the scientists they'd need and all the money they'd need. He answered him in 5 words: the will to do it. This is exactly what he's saying. If you will lock into that idea, and if you have to borrow the money from your grandmother, do it and get into the idea. Set up multiple sources of income. I don't even know how many sources of income I got. I'm not interested. I treat it like a game. It's just something that I do. I do it because it's fun. All right? He said, any idea that is held in the mind, that's emphasized, that's either feared or revered, will begin at once to clothe itself in the most convenient and appropriate form available. Well, Ray Stanford sat down with me with that book, and he put an R on a sheet of paper. Then he put 3 letters down beside it, and he said, Bob, let this represent happiness, health, and wealth. Then he asked me if I thought he was a happy guy. I said, yeah, he seemed pretty happy to me. He said, have you ever seen me sick? And I had to admit I hadn't. He said, have you ever seen me when I was broke? And I had to admit I hadn't. Well, he said, you've got to be one of the most miserable people I've ever met. And I was. I was a very unhappy human being. And I had been unhappy, I think always. Now, that didn't mean I didn't have periods of fun. I had fun, but fun is very short-lived and it's very shallow. Happiness is something long-lasting and it runs very deep. There's an enormous difference in the two. So I had fun off and on, but I had always been a pretty unhappy human being. And he said, you're always sick. Now, he said, you don't have a terminal illness or anything, but you've always got a cold or a headache or something. Yeah, and he said, you're always broke. And he said, I want you to know something. This stuff can't talk, but it can hear. Yet if you call it, it'll come. Well, he had my attention. I thought, my God, yes, that's right. You know, I was ready to get a blowhorn and yell for it. Well, you see, I was earning 4 and I owed 6. So what he said was appealing, but I couldn't relate to it. My paradigm wouldn't even permit me to imagine myself where he was taking me. Now, this guy was very emphatic. I am very emphatic about this information. You may not agree with me. You may not believe what I'm telling you, but you know I believe it. Well, that's where I was at with him. I didn't really believe that I could do what he was saying, but I believe he believed I could. Yet he said, as long as you'll do what I tell you, I'll help you. I was telling the people at breakfast this morning, I got a rule in coaching. If you don't do what I tell you, I quit talking to you. And there's no refunds. That's the deal. And we go into that deal right at the start. Otherwise, I'm wasting your time, you're wasting my time, we're wasting our time. That doesn't make sense. You see? Well, that was where I learned it. He said, as long as you do what I tell you, I'll help you. Yeah, and I had such confidence in him. I believe he believed in me. Yet he said, your way's not working. Why don't you try mine? Within a year, my income had gone to $175,000. Then it went over $1 million. I think earning money is probably one of the simplest things I've ever learned to do. I think it was easier than learning how to drive a car. It was a lot easier than learning how to build a PowerPoint slide. Oh yeah, no, it really was, you see. But I learned how to do it. Now here's my contention. If I could learn how to do it, anybody in this room could learn how to do it. Now, you see me standing here, I'm fairly articulate, and I'm quite comfortable in front of an audience. I used to be very shy, quiet, withdrawn person. I couldn't even stand up and ask a question in a group. And so he'd be looking at me, he's well-dressed, he earns all kinds of money, he's totally relaxed. You know, he's different than me. No, I'm no different than you. I may appear to be different, but I'm going to tell you something. I would have never even been in this room. I wouldn't have even had enough awareness to come to something like this. I'd have never believed I could learn how to do anything like this. If this guy hadn't lived next door to the fire hall, if he hadn't seen something in me that I couldn't see, and then he had a desire to teach it to me. Somebody was asking me this morning, I said I wanted to go and meet Earl Nightingale to find out what made him tick. He said, what makes you tick? That's what makes me tick. I've got an insatiable desire for you to get what I'm giving you here. I want you to understand this. I want you to know that like that you can change your life. It's simply a decision. I was listening to Pat yesterday, and he said something right at the start of his meeting. You've got to be careful. People are going to get angry with you. People are going to accuse you of all kinds of things because you're leaving them. They don't want you to leave. Understand this for a moment. There's a certain social circle around you. There's people that you hang out with. They're your friends, your relatives, neighbors. Here's a rule. Mike Bosch taught me this. He started Federal Express with Fred Smith. He said, people don't resist change. He said, people resist being changed. That's a very significant point. I used to think people resist change. They don't resist change. People resist being changed. Well, you see, when you start on your path, and you're going to build the business or build businesses, you're going to change you, you're going to leave them. Oh, it isn't a quick divorce, but you're going to drift away. You're not going to have the time to sit and talk about nothing anymore. You've got more important stuff going on in your head. They don't want you to leave. You are forcing them to adapt to your absence, and they're fighting it. Now, it's a bit of a paradox because if you wired them up with a polygraph and said, do you want Harry or Betty to win? They'd say, of course we want them to win. But if you got into their emotional mind, we don't want them to leave. They won't talk to us. I hardly ever see them anymore. They got that great big car. Who do they think they are? What the hell do you expect them to do with the money? Bury it in the yard or something? Okay? They don't think. Well, that's what happened. My life changed. I immediately began following Napoleon Hill's teaching. I am a dyed-in-the-wool convert. And I decided, rather than copy the dummies, I was going to copy successful people. I remember one day, I walked into a bar, and I picked up a drink, and I looked at it, and I looked around, and I thought, they're all bums in here. And they were. Then I thought, my God, I must be too. I'm always here. Then I put that glass back down, and I said, I am never coming back, and I'm never going to pick that up again. And I never did. That was a long time ago. And you know, none of those guys have phoned to see if I was ill. I don't even think they know that I left.